Battalion is a drum sequencer plugin by Unfiltered Audio that combines classic synthesis with modern sample-based sound design. It allows you to create sonically rich and complex drum sounds with very minimal effort. Battalion's a creative plugin that rewards experimentation. That's how you end up with the most interesting tones and textures. You can use it to make unique drum kits for use in electronic, pop, or hip-hop tracks. Sound designers can also benefit from Battalion's extreme filtering, modulation, and randomization capabilities. To demo Battalion, start a free Mega Plan trial using the link below. This will let you demo all of Plugin Alliance's plugins for 30 days. Let's kick things off with some audio examples so you can hear what Battalion is capable of. On the left side of the interface, there are 8 slots or voices for drum sounds. You can trigger these using your MIDI keyboard. It's possible to solo and mute each voice, as well as duplicate sounds by dragging and dropping them onto other slots. The fastest way to get started with Battalion is to use presets. Different drum sounds will load into each slot, and pre-made patterns will load into the plugin's sequencer. You can also randomize the plugin's settings by clicking this dice button. It really is random, so you'll get some extremely unique rhythms and sounds when you do this. Battalion's features are organized into 5 pages. The voice page allows you to shape the sound playing from the selected slot. The performance page provides a set of controls that can be easily mapped to a MIDI controller. These controls affect the parameters of every voice. When performing live, you'd want to map these parameters to your keyboard for the most control over your drum hits. There's a sequencer page that allows you to create drum patterns and input custom parameter values for each step. You also have an all page that acts as a global sequencer view, making it easy to create and view the arrangement of your kits. Finally, there's a mix effects page that lets you apply delay and reverb, adjust pan position, and modify each voice's gain. You can also adjust trigger settings and route voices to separate audio tracks in your DAW. On the right-hand side, you have a master section with a maximize feature that boosts quiet signals, changes the shape of decay tails, and exaggerates reverb. Below that, there's a 3-band EQ, 3 waveform distortion algorithms, and a master output fader. So you have a broad overview of the plugin and its capabilities, but let's explore it more in depth. The voice page has a synth module and sampler module with an option to blend between them. In the synth module, you can choose between different types of synthesis engines. Each one sounds different and provides a unique set of tone shaping controls. The sampler lets you load a drum sample and manipulate it. You can adjust its start point, end point, pitch, apply a tilt filter, add compression, and adjust its gain. There are tons of factory samples, but you can also load your own. Clicking the dice button will randomize the factory sample that's loaded. You can select 3 other playback engines: phase warp, cloner, and granular. Each engine has a unique set of parameters, so try experimenting with them. You can toggle the synth engine and sampler engine on and off, as well as blend between them. Up top, there's a tone section that allows you to apply different types of filters to your sound, adjust the cutoff frequency, add a resonance boost, and introduce distortion. The filter is applied either before or after distortion. You can choose from a variety of distortion algorithms and adjust the depth of the effect with this knob. By default, envelope 1 controls the amp envelope of the synth engine, and envelope 2 controls the amp envelope of the sampler engine. You can adjust this configuration so envelope 1 controls both engines or envelope 2 controls both. You'll notice that these are not ADSR envelopes, but instead AHD or attack, hold, and decay envelopes. At 0% velocity, all hits will be the same amplitude. As you turn this up, incoming velocity values will have a more significant effect on the amplitude of the sound. There's also a curve parameter that adjusts the decay shape. There are two LFOs you can map to multiple parameters. The LFOs will continuously modulate the value of parameters over time. The modulation speed can be assigned as a frequency or note value. The shape knob affects the shape of the LFO, but its behavior changes based on the shape mode selected. In wavetable mode, the shape knob morphs between sine, triangle, saw, square, and random wave shapes. Triangle tilt morphs between falling saw, triangle, and rising saw wave shapes. Choosing pulse width allows you to control the size of a pulse width wave using the shape knob. With smooth random selected, the LFO is a random value each cycle. With bipolar mode engaged, the LFO can apply negative modulation. Amp adjusts the depth of the modulation applied. There's a handful of LFO reset options that dictate when the LFO will reset to its start position. For example, you can set the LFO to reset any time the voice is re-triggered. You can also assign random automation and velocity-dependent automation to parameters. If you're looking for simple control of multiple parameters with a single knob, map a macro to those parameters to adjust them simultaneously. Down here, you can reset the envelopes every time the voice is triggered, leading to more consistent hits, but with a chance of audible clicks. If you want to avoid the clicks, just toggle this off. The variation knob randomizes parameter values on a hit-by-hit basis. Almost every voice parameter has randomization applied, which leads to some very natural and organic sounds, in the sense that each hit sounds a little or a lot different. You can send your sound to a delay or reverb. The effect settings are found in the Mix Effects page, which we'll cover. Lastly, there's a pan position knob and voice gain slider. To toggle between two different voice presets without changing Battalion's settings on different pages, use the voice presets section. The eraser button will wipe the current voice settings, letting you start from scratch. You can also randomize the voice settings. The performance page offsets the parameters of every voice. This means you can adjust the sound of entire drum kits using a single set of controls. You can include or exclude voices and invert parameter offsets. The first row of knobs offsets the attack, hold, decay, and curve of both envelopes for all slots. The second row of knobs affects all the synth engines. There's a pitch parameter, and the rest of these affect the first, second, third, and fourth parameters of each engine. The third row affects every sampler engine with the same concept applied. This knob controls pitch, while the others affect parameters 1 to 4. These parameters are linked to automation controls, while these are linked to tone controls. You have a depth knob that affects the intensity of all the performance page parameters. This is a good way to scale back the changes you've made. There's a randomize button that randomizes all the performance page parameters. The amount of randomization applied is based on the knob below this dice button. You can commit the performance page processing, which adjusts the parameters of each voice and resets the performance parameters to their default values. Remember that these performance parameters offset the voice parameters. The values aren't necessarily linked. There's also the option to reset the changes you've made and bypass the performance page offsets. These knobs offset the global sequencer settings, which we're about to take a look at. Battalion has a sequencer page where you can create unique patterns for each voice. The generate settings control the number of steps ranging from 1 to 16. You can manually add a trigger to each step or use the fill knob to auto-generate triggers. There are 810 patterns you can choose from. Rotate pushes the pattern to the left or right by 1 step. These modify parameters can add a lot of groove to your tracks. They affect the timing of triggers. This knob shifts the sequence forward or backward, ignoring quantization. For example, you can use this to offset a hi-hat pattern so it falls slightly behind the beat, which is common in hip-hop. Swing adjusts how early or late every other trigger is. Shape clusters triggers together toward the beginning or end of the pattern, resulting in ramping accelerando or decelerando effects. Negative density values increase the likelihood that triggers you've added won't play. Positive values increase the chance a hit will play when no triggers have been added. Multi speeds up or slows down the pattern, allowing you to double or halve the playback speed. Maybe you want to switch the kick track into halftime. You can do that by automating this parameter. Speed adjusts the length of each step. With 1/4 selected, each step is equivalent to a quarter note in your DAW at whatever BPM your project uses. Length adjusts the length of the manually filled pattern sequence, which is separate from the length of the pattern generator. The black nodes are auto-generated triggers, while the red ones are manually added. You can have an 8-step pattern that repeats, but then add a manual variation across 64 steps. With snap enabled, this length parameter is forced to be a multiple of the step's length. As I cycle through length values, you'll see that the sequencer doesn't update until I hit a multiple of 8. When you click on Reset, the sequence will reset based on the value of the corresponding knob. For example, if I set this to 4, the loop will reset after 4 steps. Humanize makes triggers play a little earlier or later, with the effect becoming more pronounced when using extreme settings. Down here, you can adjust voice settings associated with each step. Maybe you want the pitch of a voice to change over time. If you click and drag, you can adjust parameters across multiple steps in one go. You can also click and drag to make parameter changes down here. These controls randomize, shift, and delete parameter changes. You can set up different sync settings for each parameter trigger sequence. In sync mode, the length of the trigger sequence will always equal the number of steps you've selected up here. In comparison, setting it to free allows you to set up a custom length for each parameter sequence individually. There's also a trigger and retrigger option that you can explore, each behaving slightly differently. The All page is where you'll create the majority of your arrangements. You can see the sequencer for each voice and make automatic or manual changes to build patterns. Each row of knobs is linked to the sequencer beside it. The parameter that you've selected up top will display across every sequencer, allowing you to make parameter changes to multiple sequencers at once. That's it for this page. It's a simplified and reorganized version of the controls on the sequencer page that gives you an overview of the entire arrangement. On the mix effects page, you can add delay and reverb to each voice, adjust the pan position, and modify the gain. Trigger allows you to trigger multiple voices at once. For example, if you select 4 as the trigger for voice 1, voice 4 will play when voice 1 plays. Choke has the opposite effect and mutes voices that are actively playing. The routing options allow you to route each voice from the plugin to separate tracks in your DAW. From there, you can process each voice however you like. Battalion includes a shatter delay and headspace reverb. These are where voices are sent when you turn up their send level. You have a delay time knob that you can sync to the tempo of your project. There's also a feedback knob that increases the number of echoes. Glitch applies random modulation to the delay lines. Ducking reduces the amplitude of the feedback line when drum hits play, so you don't end up with a muddy mess. FB tilt applies a tilt filter to the signal. S-rate stands for sample rate. Reducing this will add artifacts, crunch, and expand the delay time. You've also got a gain knob. The stereo button affects the glitch processing, resulting in different modulation applied to the left and right channels. These are level meters. The one on the left is for the delay, and the one on the right, the reverb. You can route the delay's output through the reverb by adjusting this knob. Pre-delay delays the signal sent to the reverb, making some additional space for the dry sound. Decay adjusts the length of the reverb tail. Sample rate has a similar effect as the sample rate knob above, adding artifacts and increasing decay time. You've got a gain knob, input tilt filter, and output tilt filter. Down at the bottom, there are multiple reverb algorithms to choose from. I've been stopping and starting DAW playback by pressing the spacebar on my keyboard, and that's been activating Battalion. However, you can start and stop Battalion independently from your DAW with the play and stop buttons at the top of the UI. There are undo and redo buttons. You also have the option to save presets and load presets. There's a settings menu with some additional features. The UI is scalable, so you can reset it to the default size or save the current size. The next time you open the plugin, it will load at the size you've saved. You can select different color themes and rotate through color variants. The depth slider limits the range of randomization applied to plugin parameters when you click the various dice buttons. Drift prevention ensures that as you continue clicking a dice button, the parameter changes remain within a certain range so that on the 10th click, the settings haven't drifted miles away from where they started. You can turn tooltips on and off. These provide you with helpful information when you hover over parameters. There's also a keyboard QWASD setting that takes keyboard focus away from your DAW and allows you to control Battalion using shortcuts. Q triggers the selected voice. W and S cycle up and down between voices, while A and D toggle between pages. To test drive Battalion, start a free Megaplan trial using the link below. This will let you demo all of Plugin Alliance's products for 30 days. If this video helped you out, please give it a like and subscribe to the Plugin Alliance YouTube channel for more walkthroughs like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.